Shemot means names. And indeed in Parshat Shemot, there are many names. However, the most important name of all is missing. The central figure of Parshat Shemot, and for that matter, of the entire Torah, is Moshe, our greatest leader and prophet. However, Moshe is an Egyptian name given to Moshe not by his parents, but by the daughter of Pharaoh. Surely he received a name from his very distinguished parents, Yocheved and Amram. But nowhere in the Torah is this name mentioned. Why is this name hidden? Why is the Egyptian name Moshe the name that he carries with him throughout his life? And the Medrash highlights this point by quoting God as telling Moshe that of all your names, I will call you only Moshe. And this, of course, again begs the question, why only Moshe? Why the Egyptian name and not the Jewish name? The answer the Medrash gives us is that this is because if you raise a child, it's as if you've given birth to him. The daughter of Pharaoh, by raising Moshe, deserved to be considered a mother to him and deserved to be able to give him his name. And on the Medrash, we could add that, in fact, she saved his life, and without him, he wouldn't have lived. And we can even see her act of drawing him out of the water as a birth scene. However, this Medrash is a very significant source for a very relevant issue for many people about the relationship between biological parents and adoptive parents, and how children should relate to the parents who chose to raise them when they're not their biological parents. However, I would like to take an entirely different approach to this question. I believe that Moshe is called Moshe because the formative event in Moshe's life is that event from which he received his name, in which he was drawn from the river. In that event, the daughter of Pharaoh showed her compassion and her choice not to stand by and not to see even empathy as being sufficient, but she sees a terrible injustice taking place, and she gets involved to save the innocent victim. This story, which led to Moshe's name, this story could be a prism to understand much of Moshe's later life. In fact, we know only 3 stories about Moshe until he gets to age 80 when God reveals himself to him. And each of the 3 stories could be understood in the light of the very sublime action of Pharaoh's daughter. In the first story, Moshe, he sees an Egyptian beating a fellow Jew. Moshe intervenes to save the Jew. In the second story, Moshe sees 2 Jews fighting, and when one of them hits the other, yet again, Moshe intervenes to protect the person being hit. In the third story, Moshe, he now has a death sentence on his head. He flees Egypt, and he comes to a new land, and instead of keeping a low profile, right away he gets into trouble. He sees the local shepherds unfairly taking advantage of the weakness of some of the local girls. They make them wait last to get the water from the well. Again, Moshe sees an injustice and he intervenes to protect the victims. So again, the ingredients in the original incident with the daughter of Pharaoh, this is what happens again and again in Moshe's life, in Moshe's later life. Now what's fascinating is that there's a progression between these three stories. In the first story, an outsider is attacking one of your people. And here I think we have a natural human instinct to feel solidarity with your brother who's being attacked from the outside. You feel his being attacked in a way is attacking you as well. So going and helping a fellow Jew when being attacked by the outsider is a natural instinct. In the second story, there are two Jews fighting one another. Here it's less obvious to get involved. By helping one side, you're creating an enemy with the other side. Nevertheless, Moshe again gets involved. In the third story, it's yet another level of the search for justice. There are two sides. Neither of them are your side. You could say, it's not my problem, it's their problem. But nevertheless, despite any personal connection or to either of the sides, Moshe again gets involved to see justice is done and to protect the weak. In fact, there's a fourth level if we look again at the story of the daughter of Pharaoh. In the story of the daughter of Pharaoh, it's not only Moshe, whose original name is not mentioned, there are no personal names in the story. It's all national names. The story begins that a Hebrew man and a Hebrew woman have a baby, and there's the meeting between the daughter of Pharaoh and the Hebrew baby. Now here it's trying to stress the meeting of archetypes. And in a natural situation, you say there are two nations who are enemies of one another. Here, it's not only that the daughter of Pharaoh got involved to help somebody who she's not connected with. She went and chose justice and compassion even when it was against tribal loyalty. So this, I think, is a fourth level. And in the first chapter of Sefer Devarim, we find Moshe calling for this level as well. When Moshe tells us that if there's a conflict between a brother, and a ger is a stranger, a sojourner, a non-Jew is living among Jews, we must not show any favoritism in seeing justice done in the conflict between them. Now, to be clear and not to be misunderstood, we know that in our times there are many Jews who have sided with enemies of the Jewish people, and often in the name of justice. To make things clear, I would like to say that the reason why we condemn many of the actions of these people is not because we think that they should choose tribal loyalty above truth and justice, but because we believe that the Jewish people in the land of Israel, that truth and justice is on our side. There's an Israeli singer Chava Alberstein, who one of her songs is, she talks about love of the homeland is something natural. And she continues to bemoan that why is it that love so often ends at the border. So there are 2 points over here. First, she's saying it's natural to love your homeland. In addition, she has a call for the love to be expanded to the outside. For many, this is indeed their challenge, to learn from Moshe, to learn from the daughter of Pharaoh, that compassion and humanity must ultimately go beyond the national borders. But unfortunately, there are others who have it reversed, that compassion and humanity doesn't end at the border, but begins at the border. The story of so many Jews who have compassion and empathy for everybody except for when it comes to their own people. Going back to Moshe, we mentioned the first 3 stories of Moshe, in all of which he's intervening to help stop an injustice being perpetrated. In the next story is the story of God revealing himself to Moshe. And the way God initially revealed himself was through the story of a burning bush, that the fire did not consume the bush. Rabbi Lawrence Kushner points out that there's something very, very special about this way of revelation. It took a lot of effort on Moshe's part to be able to realize that a miracle is taking place, because most people will take a brief glance at things, and if you take a brief glance at a burning bush, you will not notice that the bush is not being consumed. Only someone who could look very deeply at that which is around him will notice, will realize that a miracle is taking place, and the natural order is not being followed, and this fire must be holy fire and not natural fire. So, and I think this is a characteristic which follows Moshe from the beginning. Moshe, who's so aware, so much sees the pain and suffering around him, he is Moshe that ultimately will be able to see the presence of God around him. And going back to Paro's daughter, as we mentioned, the Torah does not tell us anywhere the name of Paro's daughter. However, there's a medrash that God tells Paro's daughter, I will call you Batya. I will call you the daughter of God. And in a way, this is also very appropriate. If Paro's daughter adopted Moshe, she wasn't the biological mother, but she raised him and gave him his name. It's appropriate that God, measure for measure, almost adopts the daughter of Pharaoh, and he too gives her her name, daughter Batya, daughter of God. If you look at the story of the Exodus as a whole, there's almost a circular pattern. The story begins with Paro's daughter drawing Moshe out of the water. This act of compassion leads to other acts of compassion by Moshe, and at the end of the story we find God taking the Jewish people, drawing the Jewish people out of the water, out of the Red Sea, in a scene very much parallel to that which happened with the daughter of Pharaoh and Moshe. There's a Hebrew saying, Maseh avot siman labanim. The actions of the fathers are often a sign for the sons. In this story, I think things are reversed. The action of the daughter is a sign for her father. Shabbat Shalom.